What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today I want to talk about the New York Giants receiving core because it's a mess. The Giants are thin at wide receiver ever since Malik Neighbors, of course, tore his ACL in Week 4 and was ruled out for the rest of the season. Well, now the New York Giants are also down another starting wide receiver, that being Darius Slayton. Update on Slayton, he is ruled out for tomorrow night's game versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Slayton suffered a hamstring injury in Week 5 against the New Orleans Saints, I think sometime in the third quarter, and he was sidelined for the remainder of that game. And of course, with it being a short week, going from Sunday to Thursday with the next game in tow, Darius Slayton could not recover in time. And that's a significant update on the Giants' injury report, not being with who was their number one wide receiver going into this matchup, no longer being with the team. That's a big deal. However, there are some other injury report takeaways that we're going to discuss, and we're going to take a look at this receiving core without Slayton and discuss who could step up, who could they potentially call up off the practice squad, and also have a discussion on why have they not signed a wide receiver yet. So we're going to dive into all of that, but we are going to start here at the injury report. Now, also ruled out in this game was linebacker Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles. Kind of significant because the New York Giants are really thin at linebacker. Another player ruled out in this game, linebacker Swayze Bozeman. Now, we already know that Micah McFadden is on injured reserve. Darius Muasau was injured earlier this season. He's back in the lineup, thankfully. But Swayze Bowman and Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles are those depth pieces there at linebacker for the New York Giants. Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles dealing with a hamstring injury. Bozeman dealing with an ankle injury. Both of them are out. So, while we discuss, hey, the Giants, why haven't they signed another wide receiver? Well, we can also ask, why haven't they added another linebacker to this roster as well? Because they are really thin at both of those positions and pretty much neglecting to address them despite having mounting injuries at both of those spots. Another significant update on the injury report is somebody who was not on the injury report, Tyrone Tracy Jr. That's right, he's going to be making his return to the lineup tomorrow night versus the Eagles. Tyrone Tracy has missed the Giants' last two games due to a shoulder injury that he suffered in Week 3 versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm sure you all remember it. He dislocated his shoulder pretty badly, looked really painful, and he missed the last two games as a result, but he is returning to the lineup tomorrow night. Now, I'm curious to see how that works out with Cam Skattebo, of course, kind of taking over that lead running back role. Skattebo looks like RB1 for the New York Giants. He might retain the lead running back job as well, even though Tracy Jr. is coming back. I think there is going to be a split, though. There were drives in the last couple of weeks where, yes, Skattebo was taking the majority of those drives as a starter, but he would take some drives off, and the Giants would have Devin Singletary go out there and take a few drives as the lead running back. I do think they're going to continue to do that, with Skattebo leading with the most carries, but having him come off for some drives, and that's probably where you see Tyrone Tracy Jr. get involved. But I actually think there's another interesting way that Tracy Jr. can get involved tomorrow evening, and that's going to be at wide receiver. The big topic of conversation here is going to be the Giants wide receiver room being a disaster, and we're going to dive into more of how it is a disaster in just a second. But looking at Tyrone Tracy Jr. and his profile and background, this is a guy who converted from wide receiver during his collegiate career to becoming a running back in the final season of his collegiate career, and then, of course, being a running back in the NFL with the New York Giants last season and this season. But with the Giants being as thin as they are at wide receiver, it's almost perfect timing. Slayton ruled out for Week 6. Now, Tyrone Tracy Jr. back in the lineup for Week 6. Could he get involved potentially as a receiver in this game? Now, I don't think it's very likely that you're going to see him line up at wide receiver. Maybe for a couple of snaps. Last week, Devin Singletary lined up out wide for a snap, and they threw a screen pass his way. You could definitely see something like that for Tyrone Tracy Jr., but do not expect him to be in the slot for the majority of the game or actually playing wide receiver for the majority of the game. He is a running back, and he is a damn good running back. So if you're expecting him to be a wide receiver, you're going to be let down. However, as a running back, you could see him get heavily involved in the passing game. In fact, I could see Tyrone Tracy Jr. returning and being the Giants' lead back in this game just because they do really like his receiving abilities. Now, they also really like Cam Skattebo's receiving abilities. Skattebo is a very good receiver out of the backfield, but my point being, so is Tyrone Tracy Jr. So, what the New York Giants should do in this game against Philadelphia, get those guys involved. move them around, have them come out of the backfield on some routes, even move them into the slot, move them out wide at times, but throw a lot of screen passes their way and get those guys involved in the passing game. Excuse me, because the Giants are not going to be able to sustain a 4-quarter game with guys like Bo Collins, Jalen Hyatt, and maybe Lil Jordan Humphrey or Montrell Washington as starting wide receivers for this team. It's just not going to be sustainable. So get those running backs involved. Tyrone Tracy Jr. returning to the lineup is perfect timing. I expect him to get a heavy share of touches in tomorrow's game, especially quite a few touches out of the backfield as a receiver. Scadaboo as well, though. Don't sleep on his receiving abilities. One other update from the injury report, just to kind of wrap up the injury report game preview section of this. Jermaine Luminor is questionable for tomorrow's game due to a back injury. He did not participate in practice on Monday or Tuesday. On Wednesday, though, he did have limited participation designation. Now, the Giants did not actually practice this week because it's a short week. They didn't take the practice field. So these are projections. If there were a practice, he would have been limited on Wednesday, but there wasn't any kind of padded practices or anything at all during this week as they prepare for Thursday Night Football. But Jermaine Luminor, questionable. We will see tomorrow whether or not he suits up. He's been good this year. That's an important one to keep an eye on. Having him in the lineup is absolutely crucial for this team, especially considering rookie quarterback Jackson Dart in the backfield and under center. And that's where we're going to go ahead and discuss these wide receivers now, because the Giants are not giving that rookie quarterback any help. This is pathetic what the New York Giants are doing and how they are just feeding Jackson Dart to the Wolves. How is a rookie quarterback supposed to succeed when his starting wide receiver trio features Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Stonehands Hyatt, and undrafted rookie Bo Collins? Riddle me that. I don't understand it. The Giants have had 2 weeks to sign a wide receiver. Malik Neighbors tore his ACL 2 weeks ago. It's not like it just happened this past Sunday and it was a short week. They have this short week plus an entire week last week. Okay, so they decided going into week 5, we're not going to sign a wide receiver. We're just going to roll with the guys that we have. Okay, I guess that's fine. Who are you going to call up from the practice squad for the game against the Saints? They called up nobody. And that's why in the fourth quarter of that game, you had Bo Collins running the wrong route and there was an interception. You had somebody like Jalen Hyatt dropping a deep pass that was dimed on his chest by Jackson Dart. You had an utter lack of depth at wide receiver once Darius Slayton pulled his hamstring. You've got Gunnar Olszewski on special teams. Why can't he play wide receiver is beyond me. The Giants coaching staff just won't even let him play on the offensive side of the ball, and it's ridiculous. He actually looked good at wide receiver during the preseason. I give him credit because I used to be quite a critic of him. But you know what? He looked pretty good in the preseason. Give him some reps. This offense needs some depth, and the Giants aren't bringing any in, and I do not understand it. The decision not to call up a wide receiver for last Sunday's game was so clearly and obviously a mistake. And they just decided to roll with what they had. Going into Thursday night's game, do expect them to call up a wide receiver. But also, expect the unexpected with this team. Because I said expect them to call up a wide receiver last Saturday when we were previewing Sunday's game against the Saints. Now here we are on Wednesday going into a Thursday night matchup with the Eagles at home. Will they call up a wide receiver? Man, I sure hope so, but there really is no guarantee with this team. They find new ways to baffle me every single week. So we'll go ahead and discuss who could they call up at wide receiver. Well, on their practice squad are the likes of Lil Jordan Humphrey, Daquan Felton, Amir Smith-Marset, and Dalen Cambry. 4 receivers on the New York Giants practice squad currently. Now, currently on their active roster, they have Bo Collins, Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, technically Gunnar Olszewski, and technically Darius Slayton, although he's ruled out for this game. So really all they have playable right now is Wan'Dale, Hyatt, and of course Bo Collins. Who should they call up, in my opinion? Lil Jordan Humphrey. Lil Jordan Humphrey looked really good this summer. No, he didn't look like he's going to be an elite WR1 in the NFL, but he looked like a guy who can contribute on a Sunday if you really need him to. And the Giants really need him to. Don't get that mistaken. Going into this game with Wan'Dale Robinson as your primary pass catcher, that's not a good idea. Wan'Dale has been a ghost the last couple weeks. Yeah, he looked really good in week 2 versus the Cowboys. So did everybody. Everybody this season has looked good against the Dallas Cowboys defense other than the Jets players. So when you're looking at this team, going up against this secondary that the Eagles have, they have some good pieces in there. It's not what it used to be. They don't have a top secondary in the NFL. Their secondary is better than the Giants, that's for sure. And they do have some decent players out there. But the Giants don't have anybody who can challenge any of those cornerbacks or defensive secondary pieces in the Philadelphia Eagles defensive lineup. But I like Lil Jordan Humphrey. I'm sure you all remember against the Bills in the preseason, Jackson Dart threw the first touchdown pass of his preseason career. It was caught by Lil Jordan Humphrey. The two of them had really good chemistry all throughout training camp. It showed up in the preseason on that touchdown pass and several other receptions that they connected on throughout those preseason games. So I really do like Lil Jordan Humphrey. I also do like Montrell Washington. He's not listed right now on the New York Giants practice squad, at least by whatever website I'm looking at. But Montrell Washington is a guy that I think the Giants should consider reuniting with. Another player who had incredible chemistry with Jackson Dart all throughout the summer, preseason, and training camp, and a guy who can play out of the slot. The Giants have been thin at slot receiver in particular for weeks, actually for the entirety of the season. When Wan'Dale Robinson was banged up, there was a lot of concern a couple of weeks ago because the question was, well, who's going to play in the slot then? And the ideal solution would have been, I guess you got to throw Malik Neighbors into the slot. Now Neighbors is injured, so they don't really have a backup slot receiver on this lineup. They refuse to put Jalen Hyatt in the slot, even though he's clearly not physical enough to play on the outside. So if you're going to look for a backup slot receiver on this team, I guess it would have to be Gunnar Olszewski. But again, the Giants don't seem to want to put Olszewski out there on offense. So you can bring up Amir Smith-Marset from the practice squad as well. He's a guy that can contribute on special teams as a kick returner and a punt returner. That could give you the opportunity to either have Gunnar Olszewski play some offense, or you could have Amir Smith-Marset play some offense with Gunnar Olszewski on special teams, or have both of those guys contributing at both of those positions to mitigate any risk of injury. But those are the Giants' options: Amir Smith-Marset, Daquan Felton, Lil Jordan Humphrey, and Dalen Cambry. Not exactly the most exciting options, but that's just what the Giants have. And like I said, you can't go into this game with Jalen Hyatt as your number one boundary receiver. I think everybody knows how I feel about Jalen Hyatt at this point. What really, really frustrates me about Jalen Hyatt, he doesn't even finish the play. I watch a guy like Cam Scatterbo play through the whistle. I see him pancake a player on the ground and then get up and continue to block him. Right? Like, he just doesn't stop. He continues blocking. He continues churning his legs through the whistle. That is Cam Scatterbo, and that is why I love Cam Scatterbo and the way he plays football. Jalen Hyatt, on the other hand, the ball is in the air. If he's touched while he's trying to make the grab, instead of making the catch, he flails his arms and he looks to the ref and he asks for a penalty, and then he drops the ball. How many times have we seen Jalen Hyatt do that? More times than it should ever happen, because it should never happen. Happens way too often with Jalen Hyatt that he looks for flags and doesn't complete the play. And I'm sick and tired of that. He makes these tweets in the summer. Just wait, he's gonna check off a list or whatever crap he wrote on Twitter. He's saying that he's gonna get his this season and, shock the world and silence all the critics. Well, I'm one of your critics and I'm louder than ever about you right now, Jalen Hyatt, because what I've seen from you is wildly disappointing considering what you were during your time at Tennessee. Now, I've defended Jalen Hyatt. I've said that the Giants don't know how to use him. He's clearly a slot receiver, and they refuse to play him in the slot. I'm not exonerating them because the Giants do not know how to develop talent. I'm sure there is some talent with Jalen Hyatt, and they don't know how to unlock it. Even though it doesn't seem that hard to unlock, you just throw him on some motion plays where he gets a free release, or you line him up in the slot. That seems logical. That's what Tennessee did with him. That's why he was able to run free and use his 4.4 speed all over the SEC. But unfortunately, the Giants can't seem to figure that out. They'd rather him play up against some press man coverage and just run 9 routes all game long from the outside. He's just not good at that, and that is what it is. Nevertheless, Jalen Hyatt, the Giants don't know how to use him. He doesn't know how to use his hands to catch footballs. It's a recipe for disaster. I don't want to see him starting in Week 6, but nevertheless, he's going to be, thanks to Darius Slayton's hamstring injury. So, unfortunate as that may be, we're going to watch a lot of Jalen Hyatt tomorrow night. Unless the Giants do call up Lil Jordan Humphrey, and Lil Jordan Humphrey starts on the outside. That's what the Giants should do. At least Lil Jordan Humphrey has some reliable hands. He's got some size to him too. He's a 6'4", 225-pound wide receiver out of Texas. 27 years old. Still young. A decent player that the Giants should absolutely have go out there and play some snaps tomorrow evening. in my opinion. So that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking forward to, is hopefully seeing Lil Jordan Humphrey get involved here for the New York Giants. Amir Smith-Marset is another likely candidate for Big Blue. I could totally see him out there tomorrow night. But what's the game plan from a passing standpoint for the New York Giants? Get the ball to your tight ends. That's where this is going to go, and that's what I'm going to touch on before we do wrap up this episode. I mentioned earlier in the episode getting the running backs involved, guys like Tyrone Tracy Jr. and Cam Scadaboo. They're both really good receivers out of the backfield. They should receive a good amount of targets each as receivers out of the backfield. But also, the Giants should throw to their tight ends. Last week against the Saints, on that first drive, they were carried down the field by Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger. Actually, on the first two drives, those two were getting open and they were making plays. And then the Giants stopped dialing up plays for Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. And when we're talking about guys on the Giants practice squad who could contribute in the receiving game, we mentioned Lil Jordan Humphrey. That's one. Guys like Amir Smith-Marset. But you also do have Thomas Fidone II, the 7th round rookie out of Nebraska, who flashed a lot during the preseason. He looked pretty good in the preseason. There was a large cry from the fan base, at least a portion of the fan base, to get Thomas Fidone a roster spot on the active 53. He didn't get that, of course. The Giants opted to retain Daniel Bellinger, and to his credit, Bellinger's looked pretty good when he's had an opportunity this season. But the Giants need to give him more opportunities. They need to give Theo Johnson more opportunities, and they need to consider bringing up Thomas Fidone from the practice squad. If they're not going to bring up a receiver, at least bring up a tight end. Bring up somebody who can offer you anything as a receiving threat in this offense, because right now Jackson Dart is throwing to literal accountants. And I don't want to watch the Giants stunt this poor kid's growth with bad play calling, situational mistakes, like fumbling at the 50-yard line. They did that 3 times somehow. And poor receiving talent. If there's nobody open, then he's going to develop bad habits of holding onto the ball too long, waiting for guys to get open. He's going to take hits and take sacks that way. He's going to run into contact, and he's going to get panicky. These are the things I want to avoid with Jackson Dart. I don't want to see him get stunted in his growth like we saw with previous Giants quarterbacks. So hopefully the Giants wise up here and they do add a wide receiver for tomorrow night's game, at least off of the practice squad. Now, of course, they could go into free agency. They could hit the trade market. That's pretty unlikely. Yesterday, guys, I did break down the New York Giants salary cap space. They have only $1.45 million in cap space somehow, despite being the worst team in football. You could check that one out yesterday on Fireside Giants. But knowing that they have that little amount of cap space, do not expect them to actually go out and trade for a wide receiver or sign anybody in free agency. I know Odell Beckham Jr. is a fun, popular name. People want the Giants to reunite with him. He wants to reunite with the Giants. He was just suspended for 6 games due to performance-enhancing drugs. So even if the Giants sign him now, he can't even take the field for them until week 12. So that's probably not going to happen, guys. The Giants aren't going to sign Odell Beckham Jr. midway through this season. But moving forward, we'll see if they do bring in any receivers for a workout. They have a long week ahead of them after this Thursday night's game. They'll have 10 full days to prepare for week 7 against the Denver Broncos, where they'll be on the road. So in that 10-day window, do expect the Giants to have some sort of a tryout and bring some wide receivers into practice and see if there's anybody on the open market who they could give a look to and potentially sign to the roster or to their practice squad. That's what you can expect. So no, don't expect reinforcements by tomorrow's game. Maybe somebody off of the practice squad, but do expect them to sign at least somebody low-key probably to their practice squad going into week 7 versus the Broncos. In the meantime, Jackson Dart, good luck, buddy. I feel for you. This is not going to be fun going up against the Eagles at home on prime time with this receiving core. It's going to be a challenge. But hey, guys, we are going to learn a lot about how Jackson Dart responds to adversity by watching him play with this bad of a weaponry group going into this Thursday night game. So guys, let me know your thoughts down below. Are you frustrated about the New York Giants' refusal to add a receiver just like I am? Sound off down below in the comment section. Do make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And also, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. But I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And good luck, Jackson Dart.